Hey y'all, it's your friendly neighborhood advisor here, Alexander Quinn. Today I'm going to be telling you about the 3 most costly mistakes that commonly happen to people, alright? So, let's dive into it. For tip number one, we've got overspending on depreciating assets. That basically means things like a house, car, things that wear down over time that you have to maintain. I'm going to say a car is a huge one. A car actually has the lowest return on investment for any thing that people tend to buy in their lifetime. Also, the way people go about purchasing a vehicle tends to cost them a lot more than it really needs to. So there's a huge difference made in how often you purchase a vehicle. That makes the biggest difference there. If you purchase a vehicle less often, then you tend to save thousands more dollars, and it makes a bigger difference than if you just get a car that's a little bit newer or a little bit older. Obviously, if you get a brand new car, that makes a huge difference there, but also if you get one that's just within the last 1 to 3 years, even within the last 5 years, then that will make a big difference as well. But for the most part, whatever you're going to get is usually what you're going to get. There's not going to be a big difference there based on whatever advice or approach you take to it, other than just how often you get a new vehicle. The more often you're on the market, it's the more often that you end up running into a lemon that costs you more money to try to fix up and then to toss and then to need to purchase again. But also, even if you don't run into lemons, if you look at the statistics for how much it typically costs to get a vehicle, if you just kind of do that every so often versus if you got a vehicle that was a little bit newer and you purchase less often, you actually tend to save money on that. So you can actually have a newer vehicle than you want and actually have it not cost any more money in the long run if you just purchase cars less often. So I recommend, if you're going to be purchasing vehicles, look up on Kelley Blue Book to see its value and try to figure out what the average maintenance cost is going to be for that vehicle and the life range that you're looking at to determine what is estimated maintenance cost per year is going to be. Also, cars that are newer tend to need less maintenance repairs. Cars that are older are also more likely to need repairs that cause you to just say, hey, I'm going to toss this thing anyway. So getting an older car doesn't always save you a whole lot of money unless you're getting to a car within the last 5 years. That's what makes the biggest difference when it comes to vehicles. So try to get a vehicle that's at least 5 to 6 years old and then try to hold on to it for a longer period of time. Really just spend a little more if you need to, as long as it's going to last a little bit longer so you can go through the process less often. The next thing that I'm going to say about houses is when it comes to homes, people spend too much on homes as well. They put a lot of money into homes that they don't really need to, and they don't get homes soon enough. If it takes you 30 years to pay off your home, then if you purchase your home 5 months sooner, that's 5 months sooner you have it paid off, and that's 5 months sooner that you no longer need to pay the rent. So that means every month that you are not putting a couple grand towards a house, that you're putting a couple grand towards renting to somebody else, you're giving them money instead of actually buying something for yourself. That is a huge money difference maker. But also when people buy a house, I recommend people get a house that's about half the cost of the house you actually want. So if you want to get a $300,000 house, or $500,000 is usually about what I hear people say, and then we add furniture to it, it ends up being about $1 million home and the tech that people want, etc. So if you're going to be targeting, $500,000 to $1 million home, then you want to aim for something that's half the price. So $250,000 to $500,000 is the price range you want to look at. If you get a property that is cheaper, then you're paying way less interest. And actually, when you purchase a property, you tend to pay about 3.8 times the cost of the home. So you need to, I recommend people get a property that is cheap, easy with some easy repairs needed on it, etc. Especially if it needs some repairs that other people aren't comfortable with doing, that you are okay with living in, or you're okay with paying someone to take care of those repairs, then you can get a property for less than other people would pay for it, as long as you're okay with going through the fixing up part of it. Even if you pay someone to fix it up, it usually ends up being cheaper than if you just got a property that was ready to go. So especially if it's a fix that other people are not willing to purchase for, and the owner is like, yes, I will not fix this, I don't have the money for it, then you can get some pretty good deals that way. I've done that a few times. So you go and you get a property that is cheaper than the one that you plan on getting, and you save a ton of interest, and then once you pay it off, then you sell that and use that as a down payment for the property that you do want to get. Okay, so on to tip number 2 is paying the wrong debt. All right, I see a lot of people paying the wrong debt, and that ends up causing issues. I see a lot of people paying their houses down early, and that is crazy because you're losing money when you do that. If your house is charging an interest rate of 3% per year and inflation is 5%, 10%, whatever it is, then if you had it in the bank, or if you purchased something today, then you will Or if you invest it somewhere, if you put it in like just a typical stock and you just earned like 10% per year, you'd be making more money that way than paying off the home early. In fact, people leverage home debt to pay for other things. Like that's how a lot of the rich handle their money. That's how they get their money in the first place. Is they're like, well, I'm living here and I'm paying this off. So they refinance, take out the money and use that as a loan to start their business or whatever the case may be. Leveraging debt is crazy essential for building, well, not essential, but it's how the wealthy people handle their money. They're always trying to refinance and trying to get money out, and they try to owe as much as they can on their property. Otherwise, there's value in the property sitting there doing nothing that they could have making money over here. They pull out that money so that they basically get paid back for getting the property in the first place, and it pays itself off if you're renting out that property. So you don't want to be paying off your home early. You want to be putting that towards an investment or towards savings. Just keep a couple grand saved up. Once you hit about $2,000, then you should be trying to look at how and where you want to invest that and put it somewhere. And if you don't know what to do, then just try to find like an easy stock portfolio that just has its hands in everything so that your interest rate is going to be based on the typical stock. For example, the S&P 500, this is not stock advice just for legal reasons, but the S&P 500, it typically makes 10% per year over time. And if you look at COVID, when the economy was in a crisis, the S&P 500 trades the top 500 most traded companies on the stock market. So those companies, those are the most traded companies. That's like Apple, Tesla, Facebook, Google, etc. And how did those companies do during the financial crisis of COVID? They actually did crazy well. So while everyone else is doing poorly, you will tend to do better. Not in every case, but typically, and even in situations where the market is also affected, the market bounces back over time. It just happens. It rebounds harder than it goes down. So that's why people say buy low, sell high. So when everyone else is getting out, you want to go in because it's cheap and it bounces back. It just has. So what you want to do is put that money somewhere safer. So if you put it in a safe fund that accrues interest over time, then it's just in a better place. And that's if you don't want to have to do any work and you want to just kind of like leave it there, set it and forget it. Otherwise, if you want to do some work, you can look into day trading, which requires a different strategy from typical stock investing. Or you can look into stock investing, long-term investments if you want to. Or you could look into renting out properties, or you can look into starting up your own business, or just getting a contracting job. You can just put yourself out there on Craigslist as a painter, whatever, do something that older people can't do. Start with that, gain some experience, and then branch out into other things like learning how to do more mudding, taping, walling, etc., and just kind of grow into the types of things that you do through that. So the tip number 3 is going to be inflation and savings. So inflation and savings, I already covered this for somewhat in tip number 2. Inflation and savings is kind of the same thing, but people save a bunch of money and then they lose value every year from it being in their savings. Or when they're going for retirement, they pull out a couple of $1,000,000 and then you have a couple of $1,000,000. And if the inflation is, let's say, 10% this year, that means you lose $200,000 in value just from it sitting there. You're now losing more than you made when you were working, depending on how much you were making when you worked. So you don't want to keep it in savings. Like I said earlier, once you hit about $2,000 in savings, you kind of want to put that somewhere else. And when people pull out, they pull all of it out at once, and I don't recommend that unless you really think the market's really gonna have issues. But then if that's the case, you should put that money into something else. Maybe buy a property and rent it out so that it appreciates. The property increases in value over time instead of the money losing value. Anyway, just don't let inflation eat away your savings. I hope these tips help someone out there. You all have a wonderful day.